Hey guys, Telegram Sam here. If you don't already know, I have an Instagram. It's telegram_Sam_vinyl. So if you're on Instagram, check me out there. But in last week's video, I asked you guys to leave some questions for me in the comments because I was doing a sort of Q&A video. Well, today's the day I'm doing that video. I was inspired to do this after watching GI at NTX Vinyl do it, and it just looked like a lot of fun and sort of like a way for me to ask a lot of questions I usually get in my comments in general, just like in one big video, and plus some other things I haven't been asked. So yeah, let's get into it. I printed off some of your questions that you guys asked me. There's probably about 20. Hopefully this video won't be too crazy long and I won't blab on forever, but yeah, let's get into it. So this is from Pink Rudy. What genre do you prefer, metal/thrash metal or grunge? I think between those two, I prefer grunge, even though I wouldn't consider grunge a term to defy a genre of music. I feel like it's sort of more a sense to defy a certain time in the early 90s in fashion. Um, but music sense grunge, there's a lot of bands with a lot of different sounds underneath it. So you have like alternative punk, uh, regular rock, hard rock. There's even like some soft rock. Like Pearl Jam to me is like a soft rock band. All the grunge bands that there were. So I would say grunge just because it has a little bit more diversity, music wise in it than like metal or thrash metal, which seems to be a little bit more narrowed. This is from Dave from Local Bandography. If you don't know Dave and his channel by now, go check him out. He has a great channel. But where are your favorite record shops in Portland and why? I understand there are quite a few options. Yes, for those of you who don't know, I live in Portland, Oregon. Great place for record stores and record shopping. Literally within a mile radius of anywhere you are in Portland, there's a record store or some shop that sells like physical music media, so I feel very lucky to live in such a great music loving place. Um, but the three I always tell people is Second Avenue Records. They're in downtown Portland. They mainly sell mostly like reissues and like newer music. But like if there was an album that came out 5 years ago that you for some reason can't find anywhere else, you'll definitely find it there. It's a bit messy and chaotic and not well organized, but I kind of like that. And they do have like some used records, but like nothing great that I've ever picked up. And they have probably one of the greatest selections of 45s I've ever seen in a record store. So if you're into that, you'd love them. Lil Axe Records, great sort of smaller shop. It's located in the Hollywood district. Um, a small store mainly sells secondhand records, but just one of those stores that has great selection of both like international music. They have like one of the biggest sections of original like African and like Caribbean music I've ever seen in the city or anywhere really. Also have just like great classic rock stuff, jazz. I found a lot of great hip hop stuff there. So yeah, they're awesome. But the number one, my all-time favorite record store, I've mentioned them a lot. Tomorrow Records. They're great. I think they've only been open since like 2018, so right around the time I really moved into the city. Um, but yeah, literally pretty much nearly every record that I showed in my best finds of 2021, I found at Tomorrow Records. Just shit I never see anywhere. Like all my holy grail stuff that I have in my collection, I have found there. Great punk selection, great jazz selection, great rock collection. They also have a really killer psych collection too. So, and they sell like a lot of great locally made like wood like storage units, and they also like sell repurposed old vintage like gear and stuff. So if you're into that, you would love them. Just I love that store so much. Yeah, so let's go. TCAT's Deep Vinyl Tracks. How much time do you devote to listening to music each day, and how much time do you spend watching other vinyl community channels? When it comes to listening to music, I mainly stream a lot of music throughout my day, especially on days I'm working. I'm mainly listening to like Spotify. So Spotify, I'd probably listen to like 3 or 4 hours worth of stuff on there, and then like when I get home, I at least try to listen to at least 2 records. But on my weekends, like I usually listen to like 5 to 7 records, depending on like if I'm doing anything that day, or if it's just like a lazy day where I'm just literally chilling at home. I can easily listen to about 7 or 8 records a day. So, and then when it comes to watching other vinyl community channels, again on like days I'm working, I will usually watch probably like an hour or so of other vinyl community channels, and then like on my weekends it's a lot more. It's like 2 or 3 hours, and plus a lot of uh, channels tend to release their stuff on the weekends, so that's kind of like the main day I watch people's stuff. Um, and then this next question is from David Ellis. Have you heard of the Chameleons, the Comsat Angels, or the Sound? 3 terrifically underrated bands from the early 80s. I don't think I've heard any of their stuff. The Chameleons kind of sounds familiar, but I couldn't name any music from them off of the top of my head. So I'm going to say no, but if you're suggesting them, they have to be good, so I'll check them out. Next up, this one's from John McCrae. Where do you get your music news/knowledge, and are there meanings to my tattoos? For my music knowledge, I read a lot of books. Pretty much when I'm listening to music, I'm reading books or magazines about music. I do watch a lot of like documentaries too, and I'm also just like very keyed in on like social media to like bands I love and like a lot of the music venues in the area. So I'm really fine tuned on social media as well. Also watch a lot of great channels on YouTube. There's a great informative channel called Trash Theory. I watch a lot of their videos. They did a great one about the origins of goth music, and they've done a couple about Iggy Pop and the Stooges and their influence on punk music, and they also do a lot of deep dives in like grunge, alternative, punk, metal. They did a great one about the influence of the song Ace of Spades by Motorhead, and they're usually about like half an hour long, and they're very well researched, very informative. So definitely recommend that channel. I'll link them down below. Trash Theory, they're great. And for the meanings of my tattoos, I would say I have like about 40 tattoos. Some of them are kind of hard to miss. I have some on my hands and my arms, and I have the one on my chest. But I would say 75% of them really don't have any meaning. I just got them because they look cool, and I just thought they were cool and wanted them on my body. I know some people have feelings about tattoos. I don't care. Do whatever you want to your body. I'm gonna do whatever I want to mine. Who knows how long I have this meat vessel for, so I'm gonna do what I can to make it look cool and make it the way I want to look. But yeah, probably the most meaningful tattoo, and the one I get asked about a lot, is the one on my chest. It says, "They're out there." That's the first sentence of the book, one of my all-time favorite books, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey. I first read that when I was about 13 or 14, and it kind of just like really struck a nerve with me, and I was dealing with a lot of mental health issues back then, and that book kind of deals with that, and it kind of helped me get through that. And I read about once every year, so it's also probably like my most read book. So I just love that book, and it just means a lot to me, and yeah, that one just means a lot to me. So great question. This one's from Wasaga George. When you were young, did you collect CDs, or was it downloading? I do have a bit of a CD collection back here. I have these 2 things full of CDs. I definitely don't listen to them as much as I do vinyl now. But yeah, I still have them, and plus there's some CDs that just you can't find on vinyl. So yeah, I have CDs, also have tapes up there, and then like these 2 boxes are like 45s and stuff. Downloading, I never really downloaded music. I would stream music and like listen to music on YouTube. That's how I discovered a lot of bands that I just couldn't find in any of the thrift stores back home in my small town. Like thrift stores were the only way to get physical music where I used to live. unless you went to Walmart, but the Walmart CD section at that time wasn't very good, or it was all like country and western or pop music, which aren't my favorite genres of music. So, yeah, streaming and listening to stuff on YouTube and deep diving stuff on YouTube was how I really got into music and discovered a lot of the music I really love now. So, this question really got me. This is from Collectrify. If you could have 5 records magically add to your collection, price and rarity, no object, what would they be? Man, I was really thinking about this pretty much for the entire week. And my final decision I literally made like minutes before I started filming this video. First and foremost, first press uncensored version of Kick Out the Jams by the MC5. That's at the top of my grail list. I actually saw one last weekend, but the record was just so torn up. It was just unplayable, and they were asking like $75 for it, and I just couldn't do it for a record that's you pretty much can't listen to. But yeah, Kick Out the Jams, number 1. 2, We Can't Be Stopped by Ghetto Boys. That's my all-time favorite rap and hip-hop record, and to have a first press of that would be so cool. Nina Simone Sings the Blues by Nina Simone. Just love that album. My favorite Nina Simone album, besides Little Girl Blue, her debut album, and a first press of Queens of the Stone Age self-titled album. I do have the 2011 reissue remaster. This within itself is very expensive and hard to find. This is the most I've ever paid for a record. But I love this album. Queens of the Stone Age are one of my all-time favorite bands, and this is definitely a top 10 record for me. And if you thought this was hard and rare to find, a first press of this original album, it has a different cover. It has like this like 50s sci-fi sort of cover art to it, and I think they did like 3 different color variants, but all of them are easily $800 to $1,000 on a good day. So yeah, I just know that's probably never going to happen, and I've heard that actually this version sounds a lot better than the original version, and plus this one also has a few bonus tracks that were on the original, but it would just be one of those things that would just be cool to have as a big Queens of the Stone Age fan. So and then last but not least, Voodoo by D'Angelo, original first press of that. One of the greatest neo-soul albums in my opinion, and I've never seen one in person, so that would be a cool one to have. And another one I get asked a lot, this is from Isaacs, why Telegram Sam? Great question, one I get a lot. It's a reference to the T-Rex song Telegram Sam. I've always just gone by Sam my whole life, so when I decided I want to do my own YouTube channel, I wanted like a cool little stage name, I guess. And plus I've always loved the names like Johnny Thunders, Joan Jett, Richard Hell, so I thought it was like a cool sort of name. Like, why just go by Sam when I could be Telegram Sam, you know? So yeah, that's why Telegram Sam. And it's just a great killer song by T-Rex too. And Bauhaus did a great cover version of it as well. This next question is from James Grind. What is the most sentimental album in your collection? Also, what is your most exciting find in the wild? My most sentimental album has to be the one that kickstarted off this entire collection. It's over in my C section. Let's see if I can find it. This is the first album I ever bought when I was 11 or 12 years old. This is Ray Charles doing his thing. Not the greatest Ray Charles album, but Ray Charles was kind of like the first person or first artist I really kind of became obsessed with. I remember as a kid they used to play the movie Ray a lot on like FX and TNT, and every time it was on I would have to watch it. And I remember checking out library books about Ray Charles because he just has such an interesting story. Like, he had so many like things working against him. 1, he was a black man in America. 2, he was blind. And 3, he had a serious drug addiction for over 20 years. Like, things most people don't survive and don't overcome. but he was always able to overcome it, and it's considered one of the greatest artists and musicians ever in American history. And it's he was kind of like one of those people for me that, like, if he could do it, I can do it. Like, I can be anything I want to be. And yeah, I got this like a couple years before I even had a turntable, so I actually had it pinned up on my wall, like right next to my bed. So when I would go to sleep and when I would wake up, I would see this album cover. So this is a very sentimental album for me, and the one that kickstarted off this collection of records. So, and then my most exciting find in the wild, I actually found this last weekend at Tomorrow Records. Is this OG copy, mono copy of The Seeds. I think this is their self-titled, I'm not sure if it's their debut, but their self-titled album. I have never seen an OG Seeds album ever in the wild. And I only paid $20 for this, which I knew, I was like, this goes definitely more for $20. And then when I looked it up on Discogs after I got home, it has never been sold on Discogs, and the lowest price someone's asking for it is, I think, like $120, $130. I don't know if that's what these are actually worth, but the Seeds in general are just one of those bands that you kind of have to have if you love like early pro punk garage 60s Lil Psych music. And yeah, it came on the original Crescendo label with the Gene Norman Presents Hollywood, California, USA, which I guess is like a sign that's like a mono version, I guess. But yeah, this was a really cool find and something I've never seen in the wild. The record itself is a little rough. There are some spots that are a bit noisy, but it plays through really well. So I was super stoked to find that. And then the next question from Alejandro Rivera. What was the first genre or genres of music you were really into, first bands or artists you were obsessed with, and how you think your music taste has evolved over time? A very loaded question. So the first genres of music I was listening to was like stuff my parents were really into. Like my dad was a big like metal, hard rock guy, so that's why I was into. But my mom was into that stuff, but she was a lot more open about music. Like, she also loved soul music, she loved alternative music, she loved pop music. So that, I think that's where I get my like diversity of music from, is my mom. For first bands or artists I was obsessed with, I first really became obsessed with Nirvana. It's interesting because I grew up in Washington State, like less than 10 years after the big, grunge explosion that happened in Seattle. So Nirvana was always playing on the radio, but I just never really got into them because there's like the same 4 songs, like Smells Like Teen Spirit, Lithium, Heart Shaped Box. But once I found the album In Utero and I heard some of their lesser known songs, I became obsessed with them, especially all their stuff on Bleach. Bleach is one of my all-time favorite albums, definitely a top 10 album for me. And I think through them, that's when I got into punk, because I knew Kurt Cobain was really into punk music. He loved Black Flag, and that's pretty much how I got into Black Flag and like hardcore music, hardcore punk music. So yeah, I really owe Nirvana into getting me into punk, which was definitely the first genre of music I really became obsessed with. No one in my family at that time really listened to punk music, so it was like, oh my god, something that's like finally my own, and like something that I can sort of geek out on. And yeah, I just pretty much all of my all-time favorite artists and albums are punk musicians. And how you think your music taste has evolved over time? I've definitely gotten more inclusive, especially these last 3 or 4 years. I've really become a lot more open-minded. And I think that in punk music, there's this weird thing that, like, you can't be a real punk fan and, like, listen to Aretha Franklin or jazz. But it's like, who the fuck cares? Who cares? Listen to what you want. I think people that try to, like, sort of oversee what makes you a real punk. It's just so stupid. It's like, it's music. Who the fuck cares? Listen to what you want to listen to. And I've definitely gotten more into like jazz, especially within the last year or two, soul and like deep cut soul funk stuff, world music, stuff I'd never really listened to 10 years prior. So yeah, it's just been a real age of discovery for me in these last like 3 or 4 years when it comes to music. And yeah, a lot of horizons have been opened because of that. Next up is from Ilya Pisman. I would love to know what sort of rig you spin your records on. I've always been kind of skeptical to show what I play my music on, just because I know there are a lot of gear snobs in the community, and that's fine. I know my system is not very high tech or super expensive. But it works for me. I think it sounds really good considering what I'm working with, and my stereo system is very, very sensitive. And plus I lived in a very thin walled apartment complex, so like I can't like crank this shit up super loud. I try not to be an asshole all the time. So I'm very like cognizant of where I live and like how I'm affecting people through playing loud music. So I don't really get to crank it up that loud. But my turntable is an Audio-Technica AT-LP60. Again, I know it's not the greatest turntable, but it works for me. It sounds good. I definitely would love to advance it in the future to one that actually has like a weighted arm. The stereo Sony system, it's an LBTD550. This is something my mom's boyfriend gave to me, and he also half bought this turntable for me. I think him and my mom went halvesies on this when I was like 16 or 17 for Christmas. And then he gave me this stereo system and these Iowa speakers. Again, I know it's not the greatest system. I don't care. I don't really care about gear and stuff. To me, it's more about the records and music. And this sounds great to me. So, yeah, answering that question. Next up from CGC Vinyl Guy, do you have your collection entered into Discogs? Yes, I have all of my record CDs, 45s, and tapes in Discogs. My Discogs handles Ledvana 13, LEDVANA 13, all one word, all lowercase. So if you're interested, you want to look at my collection, it's on there, it's public. I don't sell anything on Discogs, at least yet. So yeah. Next up from Grant Woods, has any Australian punk made it in your collection? I do have a few Australian bands. I wouldn't say punk, but like I have this Shindigger's Crash Your Party record. I found this in an antique store last year, I think. But this is a great sort of like, I want to say it's like a mix of like Elvis Costello, like with the Replacements. It's a bit more like post-punk, sort of new wave, I would say. But this is on the Wirefront label, which from what I've read is kind of like the Australian equivalent of Sub Pop. But yeah, really, really cool record. I really dig this. And then I have like a Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. I don't know if you would consider that punk. But yeah, I love Nick Cave, and I definitely want to get more of his stuff, especially like his early stuff, like the stuff he did with like Birthday Party is really awesome. Next up from Max Darling, favorite decade of music and what is the record you have spun the most? Probably my favorite decade of music has to be the 70s. Some of my all-time favorite records came out during the 70s, and plus it was such like a time of change and exploration. Like the early 70s, you kind of had a little bit of like leftover sort of psych hard rock stuff, but then towards the mid 70s you had like the beginnings of punk music, and towards the end of the 70s you had like all these advancements in technology, so you had the beginnings of like hip hop and electronic music. Yeah, so I would have to say the 70s because of that. And the record I've spun the most, probably another great Australian band, probably have to be Kick by NXS. This is one of my all-time favorite records. This was in my 5 favorite albums. Video, but this is probably the one of the first 10 or 15 records I ever bought very early on when I was like 12 or 13. Um, Again, just one of my all-time favorite records, just a perfect example of pop rock, sort of new wave album. And this is also one of my mom's all-time favorite records, so every time she comes over and visits me, we always listen to this. And this is just one of those albums when I don't kind of know what I want to listen to, but I just want to listen to something familiar and that makes me feel good. I just listen to this. Yeah, I just love this album, and it just never gets old to me, even though I've probably listened to this thousands of times by now. Next up from Tim Myhan, I think. Underrated albums. I think this is the one I sort of instantly thought of when I read that question. But this is Wild and Recluse by Bonnie Colic. This was just something I sort of just blind bought at a thrift store probably like 2 or 3 years ago. $2. Because I just like hadn't heard of her. I saw that it was like on the Orange Epic 70s label, and I was like, you know, why not? $2, check it out. And man, this is some killer sort of folk, rock, Americana music. It's kind of like the happy medium between like Joni Mitchell and Karen Dalton. It's not as happy-go-lucky as some of like early Joni Mitchell stuff, and it's not as like gothic and doomy as some of Karen Dalton's stuff was. She's just the perfect median in between those two artists, and someone I had never heard of before. And I've actually have never seen any other records from her besides this, but I really love this record. And if you love like folk singer-songwriter female stuff, you would really love this. So and he also asked, what color have you always wanted your hair but haven't tried yet? Great question, because I do dye my hair quite frequently. I've been dyeing my hair pretty much since I've been collecting music, since I was like 12 or 13. I pretty much have done every color you could possibly think of. So that was kind of hard. I think one I think would look cool, and I've always been kind of scared to do just because it's really hard to do, is like a really bright neon like yellow lime green color. Neon colors are very hard to do just because your hair essentially has to be white in order for it to look good and for the color to pick up. And plus, it's a very hard color to maintain. But yeah, if I had the time and money to go get it professionally done and do that color, that would be a cool one to do. Next one from Jason Arsenal. What genre do you aspire to know more about, and what is the next record you want as you explore that genre? I think avant-garde music in general has always kind of scared me, especially since like early on when I first really started getting into music. I was on a lot of these like forums and like Facebook music pages that would talk about how great Trout Mask Replica by Captain Beefheart was. And this was like when I was listening to like the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, like Pink Floyd, not very avant-garde stuff. And I remember listening to like just a song off of that record, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, to me at that time it was very unlistenable. But like Captain Beefheart, Safe as Milk, is one of my all-time, definitely like top 20 record for me. And this is definitely a lot more palatable and a lot more listenable than like Trout Mask Replica. But it still has a bit of avant-garde moments. But I would definitely like to try and get back into Trout Mask Replica again. And then when it comes to like sort of jazz avant-garde music, I really, really want Journey and Satya Donata by Alice Coltrane. Alice Coltrane, gosh, such a crazy innovator when it comes to like jazz, spiritual, avant-garde music, and she's just considered one of the all-time greats. And plus I know a lot of other people really love her and listen to her on the vinyl community, so she's kind of one I really want to like dive into more. Next up from Cider, I see you have your collection organized alphabetically. Which letter has the most records in it, and which letter is second? Actually, probably my most is M, which is down there. I actually had to start moving some of my M records into my N cube because my M cube was getting kind of tight. And then probably second would be my S's, just because that has a lot of my Stooges stuff in it. Literally the last half of my S section is just all Stooges and Stooges related records. So S would probably be number 2. Next up, Ronald Lucassen. Do you know a Dutch band, and do you have an album in your collection? Greetings from the Netherlands. I literally could not think of any Dutch bands. I know some like Finnish ones, Germans, but I literally could not think of any Dutch or like Netherlands based band. But if you have any, let me know. I'd love to like deep dive into that. Next up, from Maria Wesley, favorite love song, best save for music, best use of a song in film, and do you play an instrument or slash band in a band? Favorite love song would have to be, where is it? From this album. This is the Soul album from Otis Redding, but the song Cigarettes and Coffee, I just love that song. It's one of my all-time favorite songs, and it's not too like exaggerated and like metaphorical love song. It's just about literally just having a cup of coffee, smoking a cigarette at 3 a.m. with the person you're in love with, and how you just are treasuring that moment and just never want that little moment to end. Because I think that's what love is really based upon. It's just those little moments that you just share with someone. And I think that song perfectly encapsulates that. And best city for music, I think just the first one that comes to mind is New York, because there's just so many things happening there. It's great for punk, it's great for rock, it's great for hip hop, it's great for electronic. There's so many different genres and great bands constantly coming out of New York, and so many innovations happening there. So I just have to say New York based on that. Best use of a song in film. Actually was thinking of a different film, but I also am a huge cinephile, and I love movies, and I've been introduced to a lot of music through their use in movies. But I recently rewatched Apocalypse Now, and that opening scene, it's just like an opening shot of like the jungle in Vietnam, and you start to hear the instrumental beginnings of The End by The Doors, and it's very slow, very sort of atmospheric, and as soon as Jim Morrison starts singing This Is the End, all of a sudden the jungle just erupts into flames. It just like hits you in the chest, because it's just like that perfect mix of like just that jarring moment, and then like that jarring beginning of that song, and it just perfectly encapsulates what that whole movie's about, like the atrocities of war, both physically and mentally, and no one wins in wars anyway, so it just perfectly encapsulates that whole movie, especially that scene. So, and do you play an instrument slash band in a band? I do play guitar a little bit. I'm not very good. That's why I listen to music and don't play music. But I've never been in a band. And then last but not least, from Keith Wood, how many records have you added to your collection since your first video, and do you routinely purge records that don't get listened to very much? Probably when I first started filming, I probably only had like 150 to 200 records, and now I probably have close to 600 records. So yeah, in a matter of a year and a half, I have definitely grown my record collection. But yeah, I've just been lucky enough to both have a lot of great work success, so like I've been getting a lot more money. So I think it's just a mixture of that, and just obviously having stuff to show for these videos. So yeah, and plus getting introduced to so much stuff and having people recommend things to me, and also people sending me records. So I've just been very fortunate on all fronts of being able to have the opportunity to expand my record collection in such a short amount of time. So, and I do routinely purge my records at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. I will go through my record collection and be like, okay, I haven't listened to that a long while. Don't plan on listening to it. Um, Usually I will save them, and like if someone says like, oh, I really love rock music or like this, that, or the other, I will reach out to them and try to send it to them. But if not, I will just like trade them in for like store credit or whatever at my local record stores. But yeah, that was the last question. Such great questions. This was such a fun video to do. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.